Hello everybody. I just thought I'd do a little video on this shrub here because it's got quite an interesting history here on the farm. I actually planted this shrub, I think about 10 years ago in this spot, although the spot was different then because we didn't have this big garden initiated here at that point. It was just a single shrub placed here under these red pines. And for many years it just sort of stayed fairly small, didn't really grow very fast. And it might get some buds in the early spring, but they never bloomed half the time. Maybe we got a few blooms if I remember right, but most of them never actually broke out into bloom. This year is the first year that it's actually looked beautiful like this, just totally covered in blossoms. And it's grown quite a bit in the last few years as well. And I think a lot of that is to do with having this garden in place here now and the associated characteristics with that. I'll talk about that in a minute. Anyhow, I think I've lost the tag that came with this shrub over the years, but as far as I remember, this was a Northern Lights azalea. The Northern Lights azalea was actually hybridized and produced at the University of Minnesota way back in the 1950s. I think it actually became an actual hybrid in 1957, and then they actually got it out into the public in the late 70s for sale. And there's been a number of related hybrids related to it. But what the researchers attempted to do and were successful at was developing a hybrid that could survive minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit weather and still have successful blooms. So that's what this particular hybrid is good at, being cold hardy. And it certainly has done well this year, and previous years it's grown quite a bit. So this shrub is now situated within my big hosta garden. I built this garden about 3 or 4 years ago. I edged it with big rocks and I dug up the earth and added topsoil and compost to it, and then I've mulched it several times since. And I think it's those factors that have really helped this shrub to grow better and produce more flowers this year. Having the mulch on really keeps the soil moist evenly throughout the summer, which is what they like. They don't like to dry out at all, and they don't like to get too wet. So azaleas in general, and this one specifically as well, they like an acidic soil, and they don't want an alkaline soil. They'll suffer from chlorosis if they're on alkaline soil, and they don't want to get too wet as well. If they get wet constantly, they will die. So you want free draining soil. Sands are good because they're acidic, as long as you have some compost and organic matter in there as well. So that's what I've been doing, is adding compost each year for the last few years, and then, as I mentioned, the mulch on top to keep it moist. It's also situated under several big red pines, so that helps shade it throughout the day to a large degree. It does get some more direct sun in the afternoon. They like to be in a fairly sunny location with partial shade. They don't want to be fully shaded constantly or fully in the sun constantly. They like that mix. So I think that's why it's doing better this year. It's just my hypothesis. They like to be somewhat sheltered as well too. They don't want to be out in a fully exposed, very windy area. They need some added protection. Anyhow, this is the Northern Lights azalea. They can get up to 7 feet high and 7 feet wide in total, and they can live for over 40 years as far as what I've been reading on them. A cold hardy azalea for your garden. One nice thing about this shrub is it really attracts the bumblebees in a large number. All this spring, since it's been flowering, I've seen bumblebees all over it, just loving it. Just shows the standard dark green leathery type leaves that these azaleas have. They're in the rhododendron family, and therefore they share very similar looking leaves to most of the standard rhododendrons. These leaves on this rhododendron are only about 2 to 3 inches long for the most part. Dark green, shiny on top. And they come out typically after the flowers, but sometimes they'll hang on the plant all year long, and they tend to turn a purple in the fall. So in addition to the azalea, we have another nice shrub in bloom right now, full of blooms. This is our flowering almond that we have planted right in front of the house here. Last year it didn't have any blooms for whatever reason. Must have been a weather related thing, I suspect. And this year it's just covered. And it's probably a bit tight to the house. We probably should have put it out a little bit more, but it seems to like it here, and it doesn't get any special treatment whatsoever. The soil isn't even very good. It's sandy and damp. But you can just see the blooms are gorgeous right now, and the bees are all over it, and the flies, they really like these blooms. They have a bit of a scent, not a lot, but very pretty. It's not really an almond tree per se. It's actually in the family of cherries. It's a prunus species, so it's a hybrid that was developed, I guess, for gardens and ornamental shrubs. But it's very pretty. And then eventually these fall off and you're just left with a tree full of dense leaves. But it's kind of a nice tree because it is so dense, and we even get birds nesting in it. We've had robins in here, and we've had cardinals on occasion nesting in this shrub because it provides such an enclosed canopy when it does come out in full leaf. Yeah, not much smell to these. I can smell something very faintly. Beautiful though, beautiful shrub.